This is the Soul-Filled Sisterhood podcast, and I'm your host, Nicole Burgess, licensed marriage and family therapist and an empowerment mentor for women. The information shared in this podcast is not a substitute, nor is it to convey professional, psychological, financial, or medical advice. If you could use such services, please seek them out from someone you trust. Now here is today's episode. Episode 125. And before I dive into today's episode, just want to remind you, if you are a highly sensitive entrepreneur and you are feeling more often than not overwhelmed, stressed out, and you think you're heading to the burnout zone and you love what you do, I encourage you to head over to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/End Overwhelm, where you can watch my free workshop on the 5 shifts to end overwhelm as a highly sensitive entrepreneur. All right, ladies, here is today's episode. So if you've been listening to me for a while, you know I often talk about introversion and being a highly sensitive, person, a woman, an entrepreneur. Maybe you're in the corporate field. One thing that I haven't talked about very much, though, is being an extrovert and highly sensitive. So, as you know, highly sensitive people make up about 20% of the population, and this is according to Dr. Elaine Aron's research that she's been doing since the 1990s. And she talks about in her book, The Highly Sensitive Person, about 70% of HSPs are made up of those who are introverted, whereas 30% are extroverted. And I'm a Myers-Briggs type indicator practitioner, and I want to share just a wee bit about what that means according to the MBTI. So introversion and extroversion is nothing more than how do you direct and receive energy. So as an introvert, right, I prefer to do a lot more of introspection. I have a really rich inner world. I direct my energy and attention inward. And I really, I'm energized by reflecting on my own and others' ideas and memories and experiences, right? That's where I'm tuned into my own inner world. That's why I talk quite a bit about doing self-reflection. I think it's important not only as an introvert, but also an extrovert. If you don't know who you are, you can't make conscious decisions. Whereas those of you who are extroverted, you direct your energy and attention outward, and you're energized by engaging with people, and that's where you take your action is through that. So you may prefer to communicate by talking, you work out ideas by talking through them, you learn best through doing or discussing, you have broad interest, you tend to be sociable and expressive. And the funny thing is, right, even though I talk quite a bit about introversion, I've got a small pocket of extroverted HSPs that I work with. The common thing that they share with me is very similar to what I hear with all HSPs that I work with, is they're overwhelmed, they're feeling burnt out, they're exhausted. When they're really deep in processing, they often feel like, I've got a ton of ideas spinning around in my mind, and I'm feeling ungrounded, unfocused. And the thing is, so many of them are unaware that they're actually a highly sensitive person. And so as I get to know them and I'm talking with them, I'm like, well, it sounds like you might be a highly sensitive person. So I'll ask them to go out and take Dr. Elaine's her quiz that she has for HSPs. And again, I'll put that in the show notes. I think I talked about it in episode 9 as well. And they start to, as I go through and I'm like, yeah, you're looking for that connection. You're taking all this information from the clients or patients that you're working with or the people that you're working with, and you're like synthesizing that down for them. You may be able to see the big picture, how that's impacting other people. And they're like, yeah. And then I'm talking, maybe I tap in on like their intuition, and they're like, yeah, like my people that I work with, they're like, wow, how do you know that? And how did you guess that? And so much of it is they're just tuned in, like HSPs are, to all the things that are going on, because you're just taking in so much information. And then as you I call it the percolating part of it, when it's in your mind, you're able then to put that back out there to the people that you're working with. But the thing is, ladies, whether you're an introvert or you're an extrovert, you need to have downtime. If you're not taking any time for yourself, if you're not pausing, you're going to be exhausted and overwhelmed. Some of my clients work really well. We do some time management things and we look at what's worked for them, what's not working for them. And then we put some things in place so that they truly do feel grounded and focused. And it may be using paper and it may be using something technology-wise that helps them kind of regain that balance, that harmony of being able to manage their time. I think another thing that my clients really appreciate when I'm working with them, they've picked me for their coach. Like, I want to work on my business. Or I'm trying to figure out how not to lose my personal life because I'm working so much in my professional life. And again, we talk quite a bit about perfectionism, which I've done that whole series in episode, I think it's 72, 73, and episode 74, where I talk about perfectionism. And they start to gain a deeper understanding, like, oh, now I see how my thought process, again, old mindsets, stories that they were buying into, how that's impacting them from really having the life that they want for their business, their career, and also their personal life, having that true harmony between the two parts. When they start to gain that insight, man, it doesn't take them much to just begin to slowly shift or pivot or put small little things in place that make a huge difference in their life. The thing is, it doesn't, for introversion and extroversion, if you remember one of the last episodes Tamara and I did together, she's like, yeah, you're like one of my top 500 friends. That's a total extrovert thing. Right? I can guarantee you that the introverts I have ever associated with or I have in my own life or know of, their list is so not that big. It may be like a handful of people that are really close to them that they know. It doesn't mean introverts don't like people and extroverts do. It just means that where do you get your energy from that? So even as an extrovert, if you love being around people and you love sharing ideas and you love what you're doing, but you are more often than not, just depleted, it could truly be because you are a highly sensitive person. That's why I really encourage you to go take Dr. Aaron's quiz to see if that's true for you. We know, those four, the acronym that Dr. Aaron talks about does, right? Depth of processing, over-arousability, emotional intensity, and then sensory sensitivity. Her biggest piece that she really states, though, regarding what makes HSPs really is that depth of processing. But I know for some clients of mine, they've told me like, oh yeah, the tag in my shirt, it gets itchy. I can't wear that. So that's a sensitivity thing. I've talked about before, for me, I don't have a lot of lights on often because, again, that's more of my sensitivity. For other people, it's smell. For others, it's sound, or it can be a combination of all of those things, textures, things like that. That all is part of it. So if you're listening to this going, I just didn't think I was an HSP. I just thought I was an extrovert, or there was just something off with me. The odds are there's nothing off with you. It's just really recognizing these traits and then learning to do what actually works for you. So HSPs, you need more downtime. I don't know how many times I've said this over the episodes with all the self-care that I've talked about, but how I say it like every single week with the clients I work with, this pushing back of, I don't need it. There must be something wrong with me. There's nothing wrong with you. This is literally your nervous system saying, I'm getting fried because you're not pausing enough for me. And I know in one of the previous episodes, I think it was episode 10 with Julie Bielen, when we were talking about, highly sensitive children, one of the things, she talked about is what Dr. Aaron talks about as well. One of the simplest activities, if you're at work or you've been on the computer a lot due to, you're working from home and, everybody else in your house is on screens, things like that. Sometimes just closing your eyes for a few minutes helps take down all of that overstimulation. If you are coming home at night and you're just like, oh my gosh, I've had an incredible day, yet you're kind of like, I call it like you're wired and fried all at the same time. You've had some great connections with people. You did some beautiful work with the folks that you work with. And at the same time, you're like, I am seriously exhausted. That's the warning, quote, the warning sign that it's time for you to take a pause. It's time for you to begin to unwind. And that may be some gentle stretching. That may be journaling, meditating. That may be stepping outside in nature for a little bit and, listen to the birds or if there's wind, look at, the trees, whether you've got leaves on it or not. I'm in the season here where we don't have leaves on the trees because it's winter. But it's still pretty to look at the trees and them swaying in the breeze. Could be petting one of your pets that's at home. Anything that just gets you back into your own body, kind of out of your head, taking some deep breaths. All of those sort of things can help you get re-grounded again in your body, out of your brain, and just recognizing it's like, okay, it's okay for me to take some time just for me. The good rule of thumb is having about 2 hours every day where it's just about you, and that's your recharging time. Now, for some people, like, I can't do 2 hours at a time. What I encourage my clients is, taking some time in the morning instead of, sleeping in until the alarm clock goes off and then hitting snooze, things like that. And then you're rushing out the door. That causes you more stress and overwhelm versus if you just get out of bed, maybe, a half hour earlier than you typically do. Start it with some meditation or true mindfulness, like taking a walk. And then at the end of the day, again, it's one thing to say, I just want to kind of binge on movies. And don't get me wrong, I love binging on certain movies and TV series, things like that. But that's still stimulation. So if you were feeling wired and fried all at the same time, take some pauses, breaks from the technology. Go and, go sit somewhere where it's quiet, or again, take a walk outside if you're able to do that, so that you can just unwind your nervous system. There are definitely differences between an introverted and an extroverted, highly sensitive person, but the common thing for both, whether you get your energy from inward or you get your energy directed outward, the common thing I hear over and over is that overwhelm, overwhelm, overwhelm. It's because you're taking on so much stimulation from the world that it's time to be able to pause it. All right, that's just my quick little snippet on distinguishing introversion versus extroversion. And I'm not talking about the high sensation seekers. I know I was going to do another episode earlier this year and I did not get around to it. But that may be coming up at one of these points in time. So my action step for those of you who are extroverted, 1, go out to Dr. Erin's website or go out to the show notes to get the link to her quiz. Then take that and see if you actually are, which will give you a big aha if you are. And like, oh, I definitely need to put some other things in place in my life so that I no longer feel quite so overwhelmed. If you are introverted or extroverted, I'm big on that self-care. So what is one thing you can add to your self-care routine if your self-care routine has kind of gone to the wayside this year with everything going on in the world? Or what could you add back? Something that you used to do that, again, got put to the wayside, whether it's, yoga, Pilates, brisk walking outside, being on the treadmill, whatever it may be. Really look at what was working for you or what would work for you now that would help you reset your system. All right, ladies, until next time, I hope that you and your families stay safe. We definitely have some hope in the world now that the vaccines have been released and things are starting to change, but we are still in this for a while. Probably, many, many more months down the road. So make sure that you are taking care of yourself, being gentle with yourself, having compassion for yourself and those around you. All right, until next time. To sign up for my workshop on the 5 shifts to end overwhelm and live a more balanced and connected life as a highly sensitive entrepreneur, go out to NicoleBurgessCoaching.com/end overwhelm.